5:19 local time. The sea is calm, the wind is under 5 knots, and visibility seems endless. On the bridge of the USS George Washington, no one says a word. Then the radar tone changes. Not an alarm? Not yet. Just a sharp, unfamiliar spike across the surface picture. New contacts appear, bearing 210 through 260. The Combat Information Center does not repeat the call. They already see it. 5 returns emerge almost at once, spread wide, moving faster than normal traffic should. No AIS, no commercial signature, clean hull outlines, speed 23 knots, then 25. That is when the carrier feels it. A low vibration moves through the deck plates as internal systems shift posture. Not a battle setting. Not routine either. Something in between. On the bridge, the captain keeps his voice level. Log the contacts. Maintain course. The officer of the deck answers immediately. Course steady, speed unchanged. Below deck, sailors pause in the middle of their steps. A tractor stops at the edge of the hangar bay. Yellow shirts freeze with their hands still on the tie-downs. No one looks around. They know that tone. Not often, but enough to recognize it. 5 surface contacts, CIC confirms. Multiple bearings, coordinated movement, unidentified. At this distance, that word matters. Unidentified does not mean invisible. It means no one is saying more than they have to. Electro-optical cameras turn outward one by one, locking onto the contacts as they break through the haze on the horizon. Long gray hulls, sharp bows, military silhouettes, still no visible flags. The bridge sends hails anyway. Standard professional English first, then Russian. No reply. The distance begins to close. 20 nautical miles, 18, 16. The closest point of approach updates automatically. The number drops again and again. Someone in CIC says it quietly. They're spreading. The 5 contacts are no longer holding parallel courses. They begin adjusting angles, widening into a shallow arc across the carrier's projected path. Not a surround, not a pursuit, a block. On the bridge, the captain steps closer to the chart table without touching it. Any emissions? Minimal, CIC replies. Surface search only, no targeting signatures. That feels deliberate. The ship's sensors are fully engaged now. Radar, infrared, electronic support measures. Everything is recording. Every bearing change, every throttle movement, every second. At 14 miles, visual confirmation sharpens. No merchant wakes, no fishing gear, no uncertainty left. 5 Russian naval ships. No one says it out loud on the bridge, but everyone knows. The hull shapes are unmistakable. Gray steel, low profiles, purposeful lines. They hold formation like they have practiced this exact geometry before. The carrier does not turn. At this size, turning means something. So does not turning. On the flight deck, the island towers above rows of parked aircraft. Their canopies flash in the sunlight, completely still. Elevators remain locked in place. Nothing launches. Nothing has to. The message is not in motion. It is in restraint. CPA now under 6 miles, CIC reports. That is close enough to remove excuses. Close enough that a small mistake becomes global headlines. One of the Russian ships edges ahead of the others, its wake thickening as its speed increases slightly. Not enough to cross the carrier's bow, only enough to test the boundary. The bridge camera zooms in. Crew members are visible on deck, helmets on. No one rushing, no visible teams at stations. Controlled, calm, professional. The carrier answers in the same language. Maintain course, the captain says again. The helmsman does not blink. 6 miles becomes 5. Somewhere deep inside the ship, a status light changes from green to amber. No announcement, no siren. Just a silent sign that the room for error is shrinking fast. The water between them suddenly feels very small. 5 naval ships, tight spacing, deliberate angles. This is not random, and whatever happens next will happen quickly. At 5:24 local time, the geometry shifts again. On the surface display, the 5 contacts stop behaving like separate ships and begin moving like parts of one system. Their spacing tightens. Bearings change by degrees, not miles. Small moves, precise moves. Contacts are adjusting course, CIC reports. Maintaining speed, coordinated. That word again. The lead Russian ship eases 10 degrees to port. Another drops back half a mile, widening the arc. 2 others hold steady on the flanks. From above, it would no longer look like a line. It would look like a gate slowly closing. Not a chase, not a surround. A barrier. The closest point of approach recalculates. The numbers flicker, then settle even lower than before. 4.3 nautical miles. The carrier's projected track now cuts straight through the center of the arc. If she holds course, she will pass through the space the Russian ships are shaping around her. If she turns even slightly, the geometry shifts in their favor. No one says that part aloud. The officer of the deck watches the chart update in real time. Every vector is logged automatically, every bearing change stamped to the second. The captain studies the display without expression. Any response to hails? Negative, CIC answers. Radio silence continues. At this distance, silence is not uncertainty, it is intention. The electro-optical feed sharpens again. Hull numbers become clearer. Superstructures resolve into clean, unmistakable lines. These are not patrol ships drifting into the wrong place. These are naval vessels operating exactly where they intend to be. On the flight deck, the wind moves across tie-down chains. Sailors start working again, but slower now, more deliberate. No one runs, no one needs to. The carrier does not speed up, it does not slow down. Speed is authority at sea. Predictability is power. Russian ships are maintaining a blocking posture, CIC says carefully. They are not crossing our bow. They are narrowing our corridor. That difference matters. Crossing the bow would force a response. Narrowing the corridor invites one. At 3.8 miles, one of the Russian ships edges closer than the others. Its wake thickens as it adds 2 knots. The movement is subtle, but the sensors catch it instantly. Contact 3 increasing speed, now 27 knots. The carrier answers with silence. No alarms, no maneuvering order. Only the steady pulse of turbines pushing thousands of tons of steel forward on the same heading they held minutes earlier. Inside CIC, analysts monitor the electronic picture. The Russian ships are emitting just enough to navigate and coordinate. No targeting radar, no lock. They are staying in the gray zone just below the line. At this range, doctrine matters more than hardware. One side is testing pressure, the other is testing discipline. 4 miles becomes 3.5. A ship on the starboard side shifts again, its bow angling inward just enough to be noticed. Not enough to break the rules of the sea, enough to make the point. The bridge team sees it. They say nothing. CPA holding, CIC reports. Still decreasing, but slowly. On the chart, the carrier's projected path threads the narrowing gap. There is room, barely. But room is still room. The Russian formation tightens one more time, then settles. Their line is set. Now they wait. And waiting is the most dangerous part. No engines roar, no systems are put on display. Nothing looks dramatic from the outside. But inside the ship, every sensor is awake. Every camera is recording. Every decision is being written into a log that will not forget. At last, the captain speaks. Continue steady. Record everything. It is not a challenge. It is not defiance. It is procedure. 3 nautical miles. At that distance, you can see people moving on deck with the naked eye. You can hear the low hum of engines through the water. You can feel how little space separates professionalism from miscalculation. 5 Russian naval ships hold the line. 1 American aircraft carrier keeps coming. No one has made a dangerous move. But the pressure is no longer theoretical. At 5:29 local time, the distance stops shrinking. Not because the Russian ships pull away, but because the carrier's steady advance forces the geometry to resolve. The arc they built now has to decide whether it closes fully or opens just enough to avoid contact. Inside the Combat Information Center, no one treats the pause as relief. Pauses at sea are fragile. CPA holding at 3.1 nautical miles, the watch officer reports. Relative motion stable. Stable is good. Predictable is better. The Russian ships keep their formation, but the precision begins to soften at the edges. One lags by a few seconds, another overcorrects a course change, then eases back. Tiny flaws invisible to the eye, but obvious to systems built to notice everything. On the bridge, the captain keeps watching the surface picture. Any change in emissions? Minimal, CIC replies. Same profiles, no targeting indicators. They are still working the margins. Below decks, the carrier continues its normal rhythm. Thousands of systems running exactly as designed. The ship does not tense, it does not flinch, it absorbs pressure because that is what it was built to do. On the flight deck, the aircraft stay parked. No catapult cycle, no deck cruise rush. From above, the carrier looks almost indifferent. That is deliberate. A sudden launch would change the atmosphere. Silence keeps the situation neutral. At 2.9 miles, a helicopter rises from the carrier's deck. Not fast, not aggressively. It lifts the way it always does, settles into a stable hover, then moves forward. Its role is precise. Not a threat, not an accident, an observer. The helicopter holds altitude well clear of the Russian ship's airspace, its sensors facing outward. Cameras record. Infrared maps, the wakes, the exhaust, the engine heat pushing steel through the water. Everything is documented. One Russian ship adjusts again, its bow turning outward by a few degrees. Small move. Bigger meaning. The gap widens. Another follows moments later. The line is loosening. Inside CIC, the watch team marks the change. Time, bearing, speed. The record grows longer, more complete. This is the answer. No warnings, no threats, no escalation. Just documentation, discipline, and a refusal to yield. At this distance, professionalism becomes the strongest signal on the water. The Russian ships continue to shadow the carrier, but the blocking posture begins to soften. Their arc becomes a curve. Their curve becomes a loose screen. They remain close enough to see clearly, but no longer arranged to force a turn. Slowly, deliberately, the carrier passes through the space they had tried to deny. At 2.5 miles, the wake patterns shift again. One Russian ship reduces speed by a knot. Another holds position but increases separation. The formation exhales. No one announces it, but everyone sees it. Pressure moves in both directions. On the bridge, the captain speaks once more. Maintain course. The helmsman's hands do not move. The helicopter completes a wide orbit, never crossing boundaries, never trying to provoke a reaction. Its sensors collect what the human eye cannot catch. Engine vibration, crew activity, tiny throttle changes that will tell the full story later. Out across the water, the Russian ships do not challenge the aircraft. They do not track it aggressively. They allow it to remain there. That choice matters. At 2 miles, the danger of collision drops fast. The most sensitive moment is already passing. Not because anyone made a dramatic retreat, but because neither side pushed beyond the limit. The carrier stays on course, huge and steady. Behind it, the Russian ships remain close, still watching, still present, but no longer controlling the geometry. Inside the ship, the mood does not shift. No celebration, no obvious release, just a quiet understanding that discipline held. This was not about raw force. It was not about who carried more hardware. It was about control. And this time, control never left the bridge. At 5:36 local time, this becomes the phase where errors usually happen, not during first contact, not during the approach. But in the quiet seconds after the pressure peaks, when crews begin to think the hardest part is over and discipline starts to loosen by inches. Inside the Combat Information Center, the watch team stays fully focused. Eyes move in a practiced rhythm from radar to optics to electronic displays. No one eases off. Not yet. CPA increasing, the officer reports. Now 2.2 nautical miles. The number should bring relief. It does not. On the surface display, the Russian formation is no longer perfectly balanced. One ship drifts slightly ahead of the others, its wake crossing the turbulence of a nearby hull. Another holds position a little too long before correcting. The spacing is still professional, but the precision is fading. Then it happens. A Russian ship on the port side makes a sharper move than before. Not hostile, not reckless, but sudden enough to stand out. Contact 2 altered course, CIC calls. Port 5 degrees, speed unchanged. 5 degrees is not much, but at this distance it is still a decision. On the bridge, the captain watches the movement unfold on the repeater display. He does not speak at once. He waits for the motion to finish, for the systems to confirm whether it is a test or simply a correction. The ship settles again. No collision danger, no crossing the bow. Just a brief instant when steel and intent move closer than expected. The carrier does not respond. More than anything else, that changes the balance. The Russian ship holds the new heading for several seconds, then eases back. Its wake narrows as its speed falls just slightly. The ships behind it adjust more slowly now, no longer moving with the same tight unity. The blocking posture is over. It does not end with drama. It simply comes apart. At 1.9 miles, the Russian ships begin opening their spacing. The arc breaks into sections. The sections turn into separate tracks again. Formation loosening, CIC reports. Shadowing posture only. Shadowing means observation. Blocking means influence. That difference means everything. Above them, the helicopter remains steady. Orbit still wide, still careful, still non-provocative. Its role has not changed. That consistency sends a quiet message of its own. We are still here. We are still watching. On the flight deck, crews move more freely now, but their pace stays controlled. No one celebrates. No one assumes the encounter is finished. The carrier continues on the exact heading it held before the Russian ships appeared. That continuity matters. At 1.5 miles, the nearest Russian ship drops slightly astern, its bow no longer aligned with the carrier's projected path. Another mirrors the move on the opposite side. The corridor widens, and no one says it out loud. On the bridge, the captain finally speaks. Log the maneuver changes. No commentary, no interpretation, only facts. Inside CIC, the log fills with times and bearings, a complete record of how pressure was applied and how it failed to force a turn. The Russian ships remain nearby, but the energy has changed. Their wakes no longer cut across the carrier's path. Their movements are reactive now, not directive. The moment has passed. At 1 nautical mile, the risk of escalation falls sharply. Tension remains, but only as an after effect, not as an active threat. The kind of tension that lingers after discipline wins. The carrier continues forward, massive and unchanged. Behind it, 5 Russian warships settle into a loose trailing pattern, maintaining presence without control. They made their point. So did the carrier. No shots, no raised voices, no visible hesitation on the bridge. But the result is clear. The effort to block is finished. What remains is observation, documentation, and slowly increasing distance between hulls that were never meant to touch. This is how pressure breaks at sea. Not with noise, with refusal. By 5:44, the surface picture settles. 5 Russian warships are still visible on radar, but their vectors no longer cross the carrier's course. They trail at a greater distance now, spread wider, holding parallel tracks that signal presence without interference. Shadowing, not blocking. Inside the Combat Information Center, the watch team confirms what the displays already show. Contact steady, CPA increasing, no further maneuvering. The words are neutral, professional, final. On the bridge of the USS, George Washington, nothing about the posture changes. The captain does not address the crew. He does not need to. The ship continues exactly as it did before the encounter began. Same course, same speed, same quiet authority. That continuity is the ending. Below decks, systems step back 1 level at a time. Status lights shift from amber to green. No announcement, just acknowledgement. The carrier's internal rhythm never broke. It only tightened, then eased. On the flight deck, the helicopter completes its last orbit and returns to the ship. It lands smoothly, rotors winding down without ceremony. Its mission is complete, not because something dramatic happened, but because nothing was allowed to escalate. The sensors stop recording only when the distance is safe. Every bearing change, every throttle movement, every second of silence, all of it preserved. The Russian ships hold their parallel courses for several more minutes, then widen their separation even more. One drifts slightly outward. Another reduces speed. The formation dissolves into individual motion, no longer acting like one single shape. The moment is over. No statements are broadcast. No signal flags go up. No one claims victory. At sea, outcomes are rarely announced. They are understood. The carrier did not turn. The carrier did not accelerate. The carrier did not open fire. And still, the attempted block did not succeed. From a distance, it might look uneventful. 5 ships approach, 5 ships fall back, steel passes steel without contact. But inside the logs, inside the recordings, the story is complete. This was not a contest of firepower, it was a test of resolve. In naval operations, restraint is not weakness, it is discipline. Learned through repetition, built into crews who understand that the most dangerous moments are often the ones when nothing actually happens. Because in those moments, judgment decides everything. The USS George Washington continues its transit. Ahead of her, the ocean remains open and unchanged. Behind her, the Russian warships stay visible for a while, then fade into the haze one by one. Presence acknowledged, pressure absorbed, course maintained. By the time the final contact disappears below radar range, the carrier has already moved on. There will be no speeches on board, no ceremony, no dramatic conclusion, only a finished log entry and another memory added to experience. At sea, power is not measured by how loudly you act. It is measured by whether your course changes at all. And on this day, only one ship decided the direction of travel.